Hi, everyone. I'm Evelyn, and this is Reppin. I am super stoked for this conversation today. She was the very first guest I ever had on Reppin. In many ways, she helped launch this show, and now she's back. Angie Thomas is a New York Times bestselling author known for writing stories that give space to people who are often overlooked, making sure their voices, experiences, and everyday realities are seen and understood. I still remember that first conversation with Angie, how open she was, how much of herself she shared. I walked away understanding not just who she is, but why she writes the way she does. In this episode, we're going to catch up on everything from The Hate You Give to her new fantasy series, Nic Blake and the Remarkables. If you're new to it, Nic Blake and the Remarkables follows a young girl who discovers a hidden world of people with magical abilities, descendants of enslaved Africans whose powers have been passed down for generations. It's a story about identity, belonging, and carrying history while you're still figuring out who you are. Angie's going to talk about how young readers connect to her work, why that connection matters more than ever. What she shares is honest, thoughtful, and it will stay with you. And having her back feels like an awesome full circle moment. So sit back, turn it up, and let's meet Angie Thomas.
In touring and talking to kids and how they process things and how they connect with characters and how they connect with stories and how they connect with each other, I'm learning about how I can do better as an adult.
Rough and rugged, represent NY, hold it down for my peeps. New York, New York. We rep the hardest, hardcore. Nobody harder. Let them know. That's the way we rock it. Tell me what you got.
Angie, first of all, thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am doing great. All things considered. The world is a weird and sad and unfortunate place right now, but I'm finding joy where I can. So I think that's what all of us have to do right now.
Yes, I think that is very, very important to do. But before we start this episode, I want to take this opportunity. I've been wanting to say this to you for years, and I may have said this to you privately, but I want to say first, thank you so much. You were my first guest on this podcast. And it was at a time where I didn't have anything to show for it. I didn't have proof of concept. I literally just called you and said, hey, this is what I want to do. And what do you think? I'd love for you to do it. And you were just like, yeah, cool. Let's do it. And you're literally my first. And now we're 121 episodes in. 121 episodes in. And the show was actually named one of Apple's new and noteworthy shows. So I wanted to say thank you first and foremost for believing at the very start when I had nothing to show. Seriously. So thank you so much.
Listen, you are amazing. So I had no doubt, and I'm not surprised by any of the success. So, hey, anything I can do to support, I'm happy to support.
Thank you. And please know that it goes both ways. Congratulations on all of your success. And I know how hard you've worked, and I'm so glad to have you back. So the first thing is you've had a whole series of books. I want to really first talk about Nic Blake. It is, 2 books about a young 12-year-old African-American girl. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is not only is it's a bestseller as well, because that's what Angie does.
Thank you.
Just what Angie does. You and I first talked about when we first did the episode like 5 years ago, that at the time, one of the reasons why you wanted to be a writer was that there were no books that you could see yourself in, and you really were a voracious reader as a kid. Talk about what this book meant to you in terms of writing Nic Blake and what some of the feedback you've been getting from kids that now you're sort of filling that void.
Yeah, the thing is, I was a picky reader. I think that's more of the term I'd use for me. It was like I was super picky about what I would and wouldn't read. Mm-hmm. And I would read, like, my favorite book was Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor, because it was about a little black girl in Mississippi. I was a little black girl in Mississippi. And then I also liked those books about the boy wizard. I don't have to say the name. And I liked the Chronicles of
Mhm.
Narnia. I liked A Wrinkle in Time, all these fantasy books, but those fantasy books didn't show me.
Right.
Not like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry did. And so I remember as a kid wishing that somebody would at one point kind of combine the two. Like, why can't I read about a Black girl in Mississippi who also has magical abilities like I'm seeing these kids
Right.
have, you know? The great thing about becoming an adult is you realize I have free will. I can do this. I can do things. So once I became an adult, I'm like, why can't I write the story? So in a lot of ways, Nic Blake, I mean, it would probably sound weird to someone, but if you took Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry and combined it with the book about the boy wizard, I think this is what you get with this,
Mhm.
you know? So I was able to not only write about a young Black girl who lives in Mississippi in Nic Blake, who has these magical abilities, I was also able to bring in things like folklore and history.
Yes.
I call it hiding the vegetables. The unfortunate thing is nowadays, specifically in education, when we're talking about DEI and all of these conversations, teachers are feeling the heat of it. And they're getting a lot of pressure about what they can and can't teach anymore, specifically when it comes to history, Black history in this country. And we can't not talk about those things with kids. So for me, with Nic Blake, I've been hiding the history in the midst of this fantasy story. So many educators are coming up against resistance if they're trying to teach history, but our kids still need to know these things. So even though it's a fantasy book, I talk about Emmett Till. I talk about lynching. I talk about these things because I'm a firm believer that as long as our kids are unaware, they're more likely to repeat the past. That's how this happens. If we're not talking about it, they're not aware of these atrocities, they're likely to grow up to become adults who repeat it or just don't understand. We're bound to lose something by not teaching our kids real history. That's just fact. And so I wanted to still talk about these things, even in the midst of a story like this, because I recognize the importance of it. But also, too, honestly, it's hard for me as a Black person in America to write a story, even a fantasy story, and not acknowledge the truths of this country and its history. So it all came together in this one book series that it has gone further than I'd imagined. I've just got back from London where I was talking to thousands of kids about it. They love it. They love the books. They're excited about films and all these different things. So it's finding its audience bit by bit. And I'm appreciative of that.
Listen, in all of your writings, you've always had great stories, fantastic characters, but you've also woven in a lot of themes that need to be looked at. I mean, yes, the kids do need to be educated, but like the adults need to be educated too. It doesn't make a difference what age it is. We need to understand where we came from to know where we are. I wanted to ask you now, amazing, London. What were some of the things, like, do you remember a conversation that you had with somebody that said something that hit you that said, oh my God, this book, it's connecting the way that I hoped, or whatever the feedback is? What were some of the things that actually were said to you that stayed with you?
You know what really gets me?
that?
And it's not even just one simple conversation. Oh, it's interesting because here in the States, especially, there have been a lot of conversations when it comes to like books and DEI and diversity, this, and this. There's a whole side of people who are afraid of white children feeling bad about being white. What's interesting to me is when I go around talking about Nic Blake with kids of all ethnicities, the thing about it is Nic and the manifestors, which is like a type of, they're not wizards, but they're like these powerful people. That's what Nic is. They're descendants of enslaved people. And I purposely did that. They're descendants of African enslaved Black folks. Like, this is something that was started, a power that was started with a tribe in Africa. I have white kids who are like, I want to be a manifestor too. For them, it's like they don't see this, and this. For them, what they see is they see something cool that they would love to be. They connect with Nic. Like, it's not that they don't see race. It's like, I see it, I acknowledge it, but also I'm like Nic in this way. Race is not a limitation to them. And so often adults in their lives make it as if, oh, you can only read this, and this because Otherwise, you're going to feel bad or this. They don't feel bad. What they see is a story about a young Black girl who has cool abilities that they identify with, whether they look like her or not. So that's always so interesting to me. Like for me, I was over there in the UK and I'm telling them, I'm like, yeah, we're going to be having movies. And I have little white British kids telling me they want to play Nic Blake in the movie. They don't speak, like, they don't speak, Now, can you have conversations with these kids about things like racism? Absolutely. And they understand if you meet them where they are. But for them, at the end of the day, they don't see it like, oh, somebody trying to make me feel bad for being white. No, they see a character they can identify with at some level. I wish more people would give kids a little more credit when it comes to that, because they have a better grip on it than most adults.
Which brings me to something you said in our first interview that made me laugh my head off and till this day stayed with me. You said, kids have a better handle on this than adults. And I think that's true, because what you said in our first interview was so simple and it was like so huge. You're like, people were pissed off about a Black Little Mermaid back in the day. Remember when it was going? And you were like, okay, so you can't have a Black mermaid, but you could have talking seafood.
Right. Like, what are we doing? It's still wild to me that people were upset about that. Like, what?
But that's so true, right? That's the adults kind of getting upset.
Yeah.
It's like our threshold of what we can and cannot accept, it doesn't even add up sometimes, I think, for me. You're right. Why can we accept a singing lobster or crawfish, but people are getting their panties in a knot because there's a Black Little Mermaid? I don't really understand that.
Right.
Were you able to kind of get into a little bit of a deeper conversation with some of these kids when they came up to you?
Not necessarily, but for them, like a lot of the conversation was about like, because with kids, what they do is with characters, they look at how they identify with that character. And that's where the connection is. And that's how they get empathy. And I think we could all learn from that. That's, to me, that's one of the biggest points of writing of books, is how they can help create empathy, because you're putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. You're learning what it is to be this person when you're in these pages. You're walking in someone else's life. And along the way, you're going to see things that hopefully you identify with, you understand, emotions you feel. And that's what they talk about. They talk about how, oh, Nic doesn't feel like, for instance, one thing in the first book Nic struggles with is she doesn't know how to use the gift, her ability. And she thinks that's what defines her. And her dad tells her, you're the real gift. Everything you need is already inside of you, whether you know how to use this power or not. You're the real gift. And I talk to kids about that, because for them, they're like, yeah, I get that. I understand it. They're not going around with magical abilities. They fly and all this stuff. But what they do identify with is this feeling of being inadequate, this feeling of I need to be perfect, this feeling of I need to be great in order to be valid. They understand that, and they can see through Nic's story that that's not always necessary. One thing I talk about a lot is perfection is false. There's no such thing as perfect. What I'll usually do is, especially when I'm talking about writing, I will do a survey of the room, and I ask the kids, I'm like, who is the greatest basketball player of all time? And somebody may say Michael Jordan. Somebody may say LeBron. Somebody may say Kobe. Somebody may say Asia Wilson. That's the right answer. But like they will give all these different answers. When I was in the UK, I'll ask them, okay, what's the best football team? Oh, and they're telling me all the different teams. They get into it and they're yelling out team names and stuff. And I say, okay, let's calm down for a second. I don't know if you all noticed, but it seems like everybody has a different answer. We got multiple answers in here. So that shows me everybody has a different idea of what greatness is. That also shows me that maybe we all have a different idea of what perfect is. So maybe perfect doesn't really exist, because there's no such thing as a standard perfection. There's no such thing. And so when you're talking to kids and you're breaking things down like that, specifically when I'm talking to them and I'm breaking it down like that, we're having a conversation about the individual, and that helps them understand the broader themes. Because they're able to see how Nic was able to handle this stuff. It helps them to connect with their own lives and figure out how they can handle it. I wish more adults would do that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm learning. Like in touring and talking to kids and how they process things and how they connect with characters and how they connect with stories and how they connect with each other. I'm learning about how I can do better as an adult. I'm learning so much from them in that. They see it like, oh yeah, that's right. It doesn't matter to them that they're a little British kid who lives in me. They see Nick and they're like, I identify with this little Black girl who lives in Mississippi. We have something in common. We both want to be perfect. We both want to be great. And I'm learning from her story what real greatness is. That's, to me, beautiful because it shows me that kids see what we often don't. We put limitations on how we empathize with others. We put limitations on how we connect with others. They do not.
Are these new lessons for you? I don't think so.
They are and they aren't. I've learned it over time in work and being an author, because even with like The Hate You Give and my other novels, I would meet young people, especially, who they may not look like the characters, but they identified with the characters. And they do it in a way that adults we've lost. And it's kind of sad. And so as a writer, especially a writer for young people, I want to continue to cultivate that for them. But yeah, it's something I've noticed over time that young people, they don't put limitations on who they can have empathy for. We do, which is sad. Adults do, but they don't. Kids can have empathy for just about anything, anyone. Us, we have some sort of limitation. We have parameters. We have guidelines.
We have prejudices.
Yeah, and we see that, unfortunately. And I think what bothers me is our kids are seeing that displayed by leaders.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing leadership who only cares about people who look like them, who sound like them, who think like them. And my fear is the message that's going to send to young people and the leaders they become.
Yeah.
As a writer, I've made it my mission. I'm like, no, I'm going to continue to write diverse stories and hopefully reach kids who don't look like these characters to remind them that, hey, you can have empathy. You can connect with people who aren't like you, because that is a lesson so many adults are missing out on.
I know how much care you put into your writings and your stories. And again, every single piece of work that you've ever put out has always incorporated important themes for people to think about. What stuns me is that The Hate You Give is on one of the most banned book lists, which is bullshit, if you ask me.
Oh my God, Mom.
Can I say that in front of Julia?
My mom is laughing. Did you hear her?
Yeah, but it is like, this show is for people to take what they want from it. Okay. Mm-hmm. This show is not about politics. It's about breaking down those barriers and seeing one another based on who we are, not what we look like or what we own. But I will say this, that I think that one of the books that is on the most banned book list, yours, is some bullshit. Okay.
Thank you.
But I think the bigger issue I think I have is the freedom of speech. I don't think books should be banned. That's my personal opinion. And I don't normally share opinions like this because everything is so polarized and everything has been politicized because it's being weaponized.
Right.
For you, being on this list, when the book really doesn't have anything inflammatory, from your point of view, you've become really an activist. You've said this on your website. And I think that was something that was not in the forefront when we first met. Like, you were a writer. We were, doing stuff. It was a book, and now it's sort of really crystallized, I think, for you. Because I've seen you post and speak out about a lot of different important issues. From your point of view, how are you taking that, being on a banned book list, or just that there is a banned book list?
It's frustrating because I'm like, why can't we put this same energy towards banning assault rifles?
That's a good question.
My book is not going to hurt or harm a child. It has not done that. It just hasn't. And we have so many bigger issues that I'm like, I wish people would put that energy towards things that are actually harming our children. I've witnessed firsthand in recent months, like, how kids are being failed every single day by institutions that are supposed to be in place to protect them and help them. Why can't we have that energy towards that we give towards books? It's frustrating, but also it's just a reminder that in this country, freedom of speech isn't free for everybody. It's just not. It never has been. I think about, the things that I've seen and heard people say in leadership positions, and I'm like, if the color of their skin were different, this would be a whole different conversation. People would be very much more outraged than they are. With book banning, though, we've been pushing back. We've been pushing back a whole lot. Like we recently, there was a big lawsuit in Florida and we won. We won against the state of Florida. What people, I'm hoping, are starting to realize is that book bans and the fight about book bans, that's wasting resources that could be used on other things. So when the state of Florida had to go to court to fight us on this, that was taxpayer money they had to use that could have been used for anything else. But instead, they're in court having to go and defend why they wanted to pull books. Like, books are not dangerous. I don't care what anybody says. Books are not dangerous. And especially compared to other things that are out there, other issues we have going on. So when it comes to the bans and the increase in them, I'm not surprised. I wish I was. I'll be more surprised when it's not an issue. What hurts me more than anything about it, I'm okay. I'm okay. People are always like, oh, it must be. I'm okay as an author. I am. That's for me. If I come up against some stuff because of it, of course. I'm more concerned about the educators whose livelihood is threatened every time, somebody has an issue with them putting a book on the shelf. There's an interesting documentary out right now called The Librarians, and I want everybody to check it out because I don't think people realize what educators and librarians have been experiencing. They've been experiencing death threats. Their livelihood has been at risk. A lot of people don't realize.
Are you serious?
And this yeah. And this documentary goes into it. We see and they follow librarians in this country who have gone up against some of this stuff. Like some of them, they've gotten the death threats, all these things just because they want to have books available to students. So definitely all your listeners, check out The Librarians. It is a documentary. It's available. I think it may be through PBS, but it is out there and it is eye-opening and it is terrifying because if they're doing this towards books, what's next? That's what you always have to ask yourself. If this is what they're doing right now with this, okay, what's next?
Right.
Teachers and librarians are feeling threatened. If they're losing their jobs, some of them are having to leave the states where they live, or some of them have had to leave the country. If this is where we are when it comes to books, what's next? So I'm okay. As an author, I'm okay. I'm more concerned about them and what they're going through and things like that. But also I'm concerned about what this leads to next, because I feel like it's testing ground. And that's what we all have to remind ourselves. If they're seeing, okay, this is what we can get away with when we're doing this with book bans. Okay, we're going to take this same approach. What are they going to do next? That's always the question we have to ask ourselves. Even when it comes to not even just book bans and stuff, when we're talking about anything right now with marginalization, if they're doing this if we're seeing the concentration camps right now and things like that, who's next? Right. If we're seeing these things happen, what's next? Who's next? So you have to pay attention to these things and watch what's going on, because you have to prepare yourself for the inevitable, unfortunately.
All fair, but here's where I'm going to challenge you. And listen, I say this because I'm getting a sample of that as well. But I think there's a lot of people that are not able to step out and see sort of the indoctrination or some of these tests, or they're not able to, or they're so immersed in their own, belief system. I don't really know what the word is. There's been a lot of division and chaos, even at this point, like, what kind of baloney you like. I mean, you could pick something and everyone is just in their camps. And, you say you got to watch and you got to be aware. I think for you, like when you're writing and you're reaching these people and you're seeing this, and this harkens back to, I think, something that we talked about in our first conversation. You were like, you grew up kind of understanding that opportunities were available to certain people, not everyone. That is, I think, very loud now, that message of, opportunity and what is available and what isn't. And that's not just about healthcare or, I don't know, pick a topic. but it's also about like rights, human rights or voice. How has that changed from the time we talked and you writing your first book and understanding like, okay, some people will have things I don't have. This society is built more for some people than others. And I know your mom has been a huge catalyst and sort of North Star in showing this to you, but you have definitely shared that in our first conversation, and that showed in The Hate You Give. But from that point, and I'm turning it to now, how has it changed?
I see it now more than ever, even in the position I'm in, because I always try to keep, as they say, an ear to the streets. I try to stay community oriented, community connected. Prime example of all of this is basketball. I know this is going to sound odd, but just stay with me for a minute. I'm a huge basketball fan. I'm big on supporting women's sports right now, especially women's basketball. I've been watching March Madness. I'm into it. But I also know that there have been changes in basketball where it's getting harder for the kid who is playing in the neighborhood park to get an opportunity to make it to the pros versus the kid whose parent is able to afford the expensive camps, the trainers, this, and this. Basketball is becoming something where kids from neighborhoods like the one where I grew up, they're getting priced out of it. They're not getting opportunities. You gotta be on an AAU team. Oh, that comes with costs. You got to be able to do travel ball. That comes with costs. You got to be able to do this, and this. That comes with costs. Something that kids were able to, like you look at all the old NBA stars, WNBA stars, a lot of them started out playing on basketball courts in their communities. Maybe they got a college scholarship, then went on to the pros. These kids are getting priced out of it. So like I'm working with an organization, a sports facility here in Mississippi called The Arc. It's a big sports facility, state of the art. And the kids can come in, they can do stuff, and they don't have to pay. Are there membership fees for people who can't afford it? Yes, but it's like state of the art. We got indoor hoops, and it keeps kids off the streets. All of this is amazing. And we've had kids who've been in there, and there have been scouts from colleges who've seen kids who they wouldn't have seen like on the AAU circuit because those kids can't afford it. So they're coming in, they're scouting, and we're seeing kids getting scholarships to junior colleges, to four-year colleges because they're getting scouted there because we're making a space for them to have that. What I'm realizing is we're in a society right now where the line between the haves and the have-nots is not only a big line, it's a long line, it is a thick line, and it is prominent.
It's deep.
And it's not even a line anymore. It's becoming a barbed wired fence.
Girl, it's the Grand Canyon.
It is. It's the Grand Canyon. It is. It really is. It's the Grand Canyon. I see it even more like getting involved in that world where it used to be like, things that opportunities young people could have, they're being taken away and they're making it harder. There's this whole idea of pull yourself up by your bootstrap. Y'all taking the boots. There aren't any boots for them to pull themselves up by. So one thing I've been trying to do is I want to be a provider of boots. I'm not just boots. I want to make sure the doors are there. Let's build some doors. Let's build some tables for these kids to sit at because otherwise the way things are going, there won't be any. So I notice it. I see it more and more, not even just in basketball, even in stuff with like in schools and opportunities for young people to write and the arts and things like that. They're taking it out of schools. It's being taken away. And if kids aren't given the full scope of opportunities, we're limiting what they can and can't do. So we're not having, sports, they're getting priced out of sports. The arts aren't available in the schools anymore. So it is becoming a thing of what can you afford when whether or not, if you can afford it or not, if whether your child can have opportunities. And so for me, that's something I think about a lot now, even more so, and what I can do to help with that canyon to build bridges so these kids can cross over.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is actually applicable beyond just young kids. It's certainly applicable to women, LGBTQIA, anybody, people of color.
Yes.
I don't know. I think if you really are able to kind of like look at it, that's happening across the board, regardless of like skin color. And even it's not specific, but yes, we're talking about for you, it is for kids. But how do you not get disheartened because you work so hard? A lot of this perspective, did it come from your mom? Because when you were growing up, again, flashing back to our first conversation, you were growing up in a tough neighborhood. You were thrown into situations where you were made painfully aware that you were in the have-nots, right?
Mhm.
And
Right.
but your mom took you to like the airport to see like there are other things, the library to see other worlds. And you sort of gain this perspective.
Mhm.
And now you're working clearly, professionally, and also personally to also be that champion for other people. Where did you gain this perspective, and like what continues to motivate you?
Because I'm a young Black woman in Mississippi. Some things are always just apparent. That's just fact. And my mom and my grandma never sugarcoated anything. That's just wasn't how they rolled. But faith was always the foundation. I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. I don't love a lot of the people doing PR I don't love the PR people are doing for Jesus. I think they misrepresent him all the time. One thing I was reading recently was I was reading about King David, and one thing that I read in Second Chronicles was that King David ruled with justice and equity. And for me, I'm like, has nobody read? Like all these people who claim, oh, we want to be a this nation. Have y'all read this? Justice and equity. Justice and equity is right there. It's actually right there in the Bible. Why aren't people following that? You get what I'm saying? So for me, my hope is in my faith, but also I recognize that we live in a slingshot society.
What does that mean?
We live in a slingshot society, meaning before we go forward, we always go back. Because that's what a slingshot does. When you're about to do a slingshot, if you have to pull it backwards before it can go forward, before it can be released. The way America is set up, the way this country is set up, the way our society is set up, anytime you start seeing change, anytime you start seeing us start making moves forward, you're always going to have a group of individuals who are going to do everything to pull back. But what they don't realize is when they're pulling back, all they're doing is giving us more power. So when we go forward with more power than we came in with. That's how I've had to view it. But also, that's what society, history has shown us. Anytime we've seen it, like every movement we've seen in this country that has done anything, that has changed anything, we always go backwards right before we go forward.
I'm just worried that the rubber band's going to snap, though.
It may have to. Maybe. My mom says, let it. It may have to. So then we have to figure out, how do we build a new rubber band? I am determined that there is no one, no situation, no thing that is going to make me feel as if I am less than in a country that my ancestors helped build, that my ancestors bled and sweated and died for. My grandfather fought in the war with one eye. My grandfather was blind in one eye at the time, and he ended up fighting in the war. I know that. I got every right, just as much as anybody else, to stay and stick around and try to call this country out and want it to live up to the promise it made. If nothing else, too, I have faith, I have hope, but I have determination. I'm like, no. We were told this is going to be the land of the free. I'm still waiting on that. We were told that justice for all. I'm still waiting on that. All of us, if nothing else, what we have to, when we're feeling like disheartened, when we're feeling hopeless, I want us to tap into that righteous anger of, we're supposed to make this country live up to its promises. We have every right to criticize it when it does not. I think if nothing else, I got the audacity. And I think more of us just got to have the audacity to keep moving forward, to keep pushing forward. We got to have the audacity to say, y'all are doing all this little stuff and all these big things and all these horrible things, but we're going to still push for what we know is better, for what we were promised, for what we know this country can be.
Yeah.
For me, as a Christian, it burns me up that you call yourself a Christian nation and do everything that is not Christ-like. So I'm angry, if nothing else, that I want to make sure that I'm going to stick around and be one of the ones that hold this country accountable and make it say, hey, if you're going to be Christ-like, let's make sure poverty is erased, that people are fed, that children are fed, that we don't have homelessness, that we make sure we look out for the least amongst us. And if the government is not going to do it, I'm going to do whatever I can to make it be that. So I guess I got the audacity to keep going, because that's something they can't take from us. They can try to take our joy. They can try to take our peace, but we can't let them take our audacity.
How are you going to protect that?
How do I protect it? I protect my audacity by focusing on love. And I know that's kind of may sound weak to someone, but because I think love conquers all, empathy is more powerful than sympathy. And if I can care about the least of those amongst me, then that's what I got to focus on. And not about me and myself and my personal interests, but I'm focused more on the kid that I know needs opportunities. I'm fighting for them. Then that's what I'm going to do. I think that's what we all have to do. Even when it comes to our own, it can sometimes feel frustrating and helpless. But if we can focus on someone or some cause or something that affects the least of those amongst us, and we fight for that, I think we're all better for it. So I got the audacity right now because I'm like, if nobody else is going to stick around and write books for these kids, I'm going to do it. If nobody else is going to speak up and make sure that, you know, these kids have mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, I'm going to be one of the ones that do it. I want to have the audacity to believe that these young people that are coming up behind me are going to create a better future than the ones who are in office right now. They're going to be better leaders. And I want to do whatever I can to make sure that happens. For me, that's my calling. That's where I find my footing. All of us have to find that for ourselves right now. We all have to figure out what is it that I can focus on that impacts the least of these amongst me that I can do something about, whether that is, like I said, making sure young people have opportunities, whether that's making sure young people have stories that they see themselves in, anything I can do on a personal level. That's where I'm going to find my fight. That's where I'm going to keep going. And I have to make sure that it's something that this person can't afford for me to give it up. These kids can't afford for me to give up. So we have to find a thing where if we don't want to fight for ourselves, we have to start fighting for other people and say, you know what? They can't afford for me to give up. So I'm going to keep pushing through.
I love all that. I had another conversation with someone else and I learned a term. I'm going to kind of pass it on to you. She called it body blocking. Basically being able to speak for somebody who may not have the resources, platform, or position to speak out. The people that do have that position and latitude and leverage do step in for those and give those people an opportunity and sort of body block them a little bit. And I think that's something that I learned, and I think it's applicable here too. And I love all of that passion just from knowing you and all the conversations that we've had. You truly are somebody that puts their money where their mouth is, and all of your values and truths are so evident in everything that you do, from your stories, your books, your characters, to your talks, to everything. You need to come back and do another one. But please don't wait another 5 years. Listen, I'm gonna ask you to sign us off. I ask all of my guests, let me know who you are and what you represent. Your first answer, do you remember what you said on the first time?
I don't.
You said, I represent the roses growing from the concrete. So this time, because you're a repeat offender, I'm going to ask you to let me know who you are and what you encourage others to represent.
I am Angie Thomas, and I encourage others to represent agape love, unconditional love. We don't have enough of that right now for one another. We don't have love for one another, genuine love for one another. And I feel as if more of us showed love and operated in love, we'd be a much better place for it, much better people for it. Because even in me being angry, it's anger out of love. Even in me being frustrated, it's because of love. Even if I feel sad in the midst of all of this, it's because of love. Because I love others and I want others to succeed. I want to see people get to their highest potential. But more than that, I want all of us to get what we were promised from this nation. In order to do that, I think I have to show love and be love and represent love. But also, too, I hope that if nothing else, I can be a creator who gives not just young people, but anybody a mirror to show them who they are or a window and a sliding glass door to show them things that they may not have ever understood.
Thank you so much, Angie, for your time and for coming back on the show. What always stands out to me is how deeply you care, not just about the stories you tell, but about the young people reading them. The way you open doors, lift others up, and make sure people feel seen, it really comes through in everything you do. So thank you for sharing that with us again. If this conversation resonated with you, here's a very simple way to support the show. Subscribe, download the episode, and share it with someone who should hear it. Those very small actions help more people discover voices and stories like these. And if you have a moment, please leave us a review. It really helps Reppin reach new listeners. You can also follow me on Instagram for clips and updates. That handle is Reppin_podcast. And if you'd like to watch the full conversation, it's available on Spotify. And don't forget to follow me on YouTube at Reppin Podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. And thank you for being a part of the Reppin community. Reppin is a Suburban Outlaw Productions. See you next time. Till then, stand up and represent.
I think you're talented. Rough and rugged. Represent.